you can hear me on stream? Very good. Okay, very welcome, everyone. There are a few new faces today. I just want to can start by just showing. We have Rebecca and Stephen on stream. And this is the room. Can you say hi? Very good. Yes, thank you. And for the ones who are new, do you have any experience of meditation? Yes, a little bit? Yeah. Yes. Non-dual meditation?
Yeah.
Yes, as well. Very well. And you too? No? No?
Mix of a little bit. I don't know exactly what non-dual.
Okay. Vedanta or Zen or something?
No, it's
No.
just like breathing, visualization.
Okay. Okay.
Sitting quiet.
Yes. Very good.
Breathing, yeah.
Yes. I ask because there is if you never touched it, if you never practiced anything of it, it always has a different flavor to you. Then it's so easy to be overtaken by the mind in what we're talking about. Very easy to make it into philosophy. It's still easy to do that. But when you have practiced some, you have seen the experience, you have seen that you can observe thoughts, these basic parts of meditation. So that's why I check. But we usually start with a short guided meditation. So you just find a comfortable position and you just close your eyes. And start by just recognizing what is here. The experience of the body. Thoughts might come. What comes through the senses. You just go from engaging in your experience to observing it. You just see what is here, in this moment. What is the emotional state? Perhaps the content of the mind, the sensations of the body. If the mind is quiet, perhaps the subtle body. And whatever comes in this moment, there's no need to control it. You just see what it is. Just allow it to be expressed. Even if it is emotions that are uncomfortable, or maybe the body is feeling this or that. You just observe. You just recognize. And in that recognition, there is the possibility to just be. Perhaps you're used to always engaging with thought, doing things, correcting, controlling. And now you just recognize. You just see what is here. What is the expression of this moment? And if you stay here in this attentive state, without trying to engage in every thought, without trying to correct or control, you notice that everything slows down. That which is always on is suddenly relaxed. All your ideas on meditation, what the practice is, how you practice, leave that for now. Just stay here. See what the present is. See what now is. Completely alert, completely attentive. And if there is space, just allow there to be silence. Even though it can feel unusual not to hold on to thoughts, see what happens if you stay. What happens in this spacious awareness? There's just space. If thoughts pull you to left and right, recognize that that is happening and come back to being aware of thinking. You can open up your eyes, move your body, stretch out your legs if you need to. A question I've gotten many times, especially from people who are starting out with meditation, is that they might listen to me and then they ask the question, but what do I practice? And I understand that initially this can be very confusing. Because the practice is not like practicing something else. Most things, when you learn them, you become progressively better. And that is what you expect. Maybe you plateau at some point, but then you change your practice a little bit and it continues. Meditation is much more a peeling away. You learn and understand certain concepts of what we talk about here, but the main purpose is to see what is in you. Me talking to you here is not so that you learn a new philosophy or a new belief. I want to point you beyond your mind. This is the whole purpose of us meeting. And some of you will possibly just recognize the silence that is here. That is the highest teaching. The teaching without words. And if you find that super abstract, that's why we talk about meditation in different ways. But that is always the purpose, to just recognize your own inherent nature, which is this silent awareness that I'm guiding you to in this guided meditation that we did. And the confusions that are about the practice is usually about effort and how to go about the practice. Because I think most of you who are here have some kind of sense that the mind seems not always very nice. It's challenging. The body-mind seems to bring about anxiousness, worries, discontentment, all this. And usually the way that the mind copes with these things is to have strategies. To try to be more positive. Try to exercise. Try to do things in a better way, more organized perhaps. And these things are fine. But if you look at the depth of what creates this sense of dissatisfaction, it is only one source, always. I don't know if you have noticed, but it has to do with identity. It has to do what you take yourself to be. And every label that you stick on yourself, if you say that you're great at something, or you cannot do it, or it's too much, or it's this or that, that creates a little wall. And this identity at a certain point has walls all around. It becomes a little prison. You can go nowhere because you have ideas everywhere why that is not possible. And the goal of meditation is not really to get rid of the mind or get rid of thoughts. Many people assume that it is, that they have to create a silent mind, that they're going to tame the mind somehow. If I just practice a lot, I will just tame my mind. I will make it as I want it to be. But if you have tried that to some greater extent, you also notice that that is not possible. Thoughts will happen as they happen. Situation will happen as they happen, not always to your convenience. And actually, if you try to control the external and your mind, it gets even worse. Because then the mind is so focused on expectations, on what it wants from life, that nothing is really allowed to happen outside of that. And people, mainly when they're young, the mind is quite open still. But with age, they feel more and more than like they know the world and they know their capabilities. And this kind of identification makes the mind makes these walls, makes the world very small. So what meditation does is to show that the walls that you have created are not real. This is the depth of meditation. That the walls, where you go and where you stop, that is just an idea. The spaciousness that is possible in your experience is infinite. But your ideas make it finite, very limited. And many people feel like, but I have to be in control of my life. I have to do my life, otherwise it's not happening. And this is also what meditation can show you, that life is just happening and unfolding as it is. And you can be with it, or you can fight against it. It's up to you. Good, total freedom. But the more you examine it, you will notice that there is not so many paths to take. In the beginning, it feels like meditation is like a smorgasbord. It's like there's 1,000 possibilities of meditation. I can do active Osho meditations. I can do mantra meditations. I can do vipassana. I can do this or that. You can practice bhajans, all these things. But the more you practice, you notice that all the practices point towards one thing. To be as you are. To stay in this moment as you are. You start to recognize things like the whole idea of future and past, the things that most people live their whole life through, that lens. Where they come from, what they have been, where they're going, is just imagination. They are just thoughts happening in this moment. And suddenly, when you see these things, your priorities are starting to be set straight. You start to recognize that this moment is not an inconvenient thing on your way to the future, like many people feel. This moment is all there is. That makes this moment very, very precious. And that makes it easy to be with it attentively and in acceptance. And that is usually what most people refer to as happiness. To be with this moment in acceptance and to be with it as it is. That is how we define happiness. And it's not because some people have the feeling of happiness as excitement. Something is happening and therefore I feel alive and I feel like it's happening. But the feeling of excitement is a feeling pointed towards the future. It's always an idea that life is going to be great. Therefore the excitement. It's not here. The happiness, the contentment of now is a deep contentment that is deeply satisfied with what is. It's not on its way somewhere. It's just a deep acceptance of now. And when we talk about deep acceptance, it sounds very clinical. But what that is in actuality, and this is what you also find on the path of meditation, is that acceptance is what we call love. That is the depth of it. That is the flavor of beingness. It has that very universal, very loving tendency. And this week, since many people have approached me, I thought I would write something about these teachings so that you can come back to them. And I thought I would just read what I have written, and I will hand all these out so you can bring them home with you. Everything you long for, intimate relationships, the validation of being seen, the ease of belonging, seems to come from the outside. We look to others for love, respect, and acceptance, and for a while it can appear to work. But if you look closely, what you're really after is not the other person or the situation. It is in the way it makes you feel inside. The warmth, the ease, the sense of being complete. And here is the shift. Those qualities do not actually come from the outside at all. They arise within you, because they are your very nature. All of that is already here. The ego tells you that you are a person moving through time, carrying the weight of the past, pushing towards the future. This is where suffering begins. In truth, the past and the future are imagination. All that exists is now. And in this now, you are not your roles or your stories. You are the one who notices thoughts, not the one defined by them. Meditation is not about creating a perfect state or becoming a different person. It is about noticing what is already present. Thoughts, feelings, and sensations will come and go. Let them. They do not define you. The ease you're looking for is found in letting life be as it is, without the effort of trying to bend the world to your will. The sense of I that claims to carry everything and keep life together is only a thought. When you see this clearly, it loses its weight. Life happens as it happens. Even the thought of me comes and goes, while what you are remains. The ego does not need to be destroyed, because it is only a passing idea, never what you truly are. Its patterns may appear, but they are just temporary movements, like ripples on water. Remain as the observer of these tendencies, and they lose their hold. Love is not something you have to earn or achieve. It shows itself naturally when you're no longer busy defining yourself. This love brings a natural gratitude and a sense of preciousness in every moment. To live this teaching is not to escape daily life, but to meet it in a new way. The body, emotions, relationships, the ups and downs, they are like clouds moving through a vast sky. They matter, but they do not limit the sky. Living without the need to hold on, to prove, to resist, is freedom. Stay as you are. Notice the quiet beneath thoughts, the ease beneath emotions, the silent openness that does not come and go. That openness is not separate from you. It is you. Practice begins with sincerity. Without it, practice becomes just another idea. Sincerity means being willing to look deeply into your own life. What truly makes me happy? Not the flash of excitement, but the deeper ease. Question the mind's answers. Challenge its assumptions. See for yourself whether possessions, roles, or achievements have ever given you lasting peace. And then Notice what happens when you don't touch your thoughts for a moment, when you let them rise and fall without interference. Something quieter is revealed. That quiet is closer to your real nature than anything the mind can produce. Practice also means turning inward in silence, to sit quietly, to notice, to stay present with whatever arises. Not to achieve a special state, but to discover what does not come and go. If your mind feels too scattered, begin with something simple, like following your breath. Let attention rest there, and gradually it will open into stillness. You are not on a journey of becoming. You are what has always been here. It is just a reminder what this is. Because it's so easy to come here, listen, you enjoy this moment, you enjoy the quiet that you experience, and you go out in your life and you're somewhere else. To just be reminded, that's why we do practice. That's why you do daily practice, so that you come back to this. You come back to recognizing the present moment. And it's not, people also have a feeling that they have to be very independent in their practice. But when you first start, use all the help you can get. I wish that when I started, that I didn't have to spend so much time by myself without guidance. I'm trying to share in a way that I would have liked to be shared too when I began. These things, even if you don't catch all the things that I talk about here, and that is normal, even that just to be with the source of a teaching that has all those elements, that has all the things that you need on your path. I've been in a couple of different traditions, and I'm very happy with the tradition I ended up in, because they saw to all the things that you need on your spiritual path. The first tradition I was in was very focused on working hard, and this appealed to me as a young man. I liked the feeling that I could if I just meditate a lot will happen. But it does not work like that. The deeper I went into it, I just felt like the practice just felt drier and drier and drier and drier. There was no life in it, because I just believed that I could push through. And then I started to understand what the water was. That the practice had to come from me, and that there is a quiet longing for freedom in me that I can just follow. That is the same thing that brought you here. Because the mind might say, oh, I'm going to sit on the floor and listen for hours. That's not, I can just be home in the couch watching Netflix. But there is something that is longing for something more in life. That wants something, that understands that this suffering that I am experiencing, this discontentment that I am experiencing in my life, there is a freedom behind all that. And I often get asked, people come to me and they say, I'm very anxious and worried. Will I get rid of that if I meditate? And this was also one of the ideas that I had, that I just practiced, and certain practices made my anxiety better for a while. And as soon as I stopped, it felt like it just came back and it became the same again. So then I got very curious about what really changes us. What are the fundamental things that makes us change? Why does not the surface level things work? Why can't I just try to be a little bit more positive? Or just pick myself up a little bit? Why doesn't that really work? Why is there no real change, even if I time and time again really try? And if you struggle with anxiety, you have probably done it. You have tried 1,000 different ways to cope with it, to be with it in different ways. So what changes us fundamentally? Why do I talk so much about our identity? Why have I already mentioned the I, the ego, so much? Because that is the whole thing. The relationship to your experience, what you take yourself to be, is how you will experience everything. And the more you see that you are not a person being born on your way to the grave, that you are the beingness of the present moment, and that everyone is that same quality. If you want to talk about seeing beyond the surface of things, seeing beyond the gender and race that people talk so much about in society, this is that. To see people beyond that, to understand that they are you. That is the core of this. And it's not in a philosophical manner or a believed manner, but in an experiential manner. That is the way this is different from many of the religious expressions, because they are based on belief. But this is based on experience. So you can also check me. This is a great thing. If I say something, you can practice it and see if it's true. So I challenge everyone here to do that. Practice and see, is Markus full of shit, or does it work? Because it has to come from you. When you see it, even if you listen to me and you say, these words are beautiful, I can feel so clearly that it resonates with truth within me, it's very easy to see, or however you feel about it. But when you practice it, when it becomes your reality, when it becomes your experience, then it is really something. And quite far into my practice, I still thought that some of the parts of it was aspirational or philosophical. And when I saw that they were not, I felt like I wanted to tell everyone, my teacher, the thing that my teacher says is true. It is not just the philosophy or nice things to hear. But the mind very much can take it like that. And for many people, it just becomes listening to Satsangs and listening to talks and meditation, becomes a comfort and becomes a hope. That you feel like, yes, this is beautiful, but I can never aspire to that, or I'm not holy enough for that, or I have too many strange things, or my ego is too strong, or whatever. But those ideas, they are the part of those prison walls that I talked about. Or it's going to take a long time. I hear that Markus has meditated for 26 years. It's going to take a long time for me to get anywhere. But the important part is your sincerity. If you are honest with yourself in your experience, if you stay with it and you come back to this and don't give up on it because it becomes challenging, and it will. At some point you will see things inside that you do not like. That happens to everyone. The things that you fear the most will start to trigger you. Fear of not being liked, being strange, being crazy, whatever your fear is, it will poke you. None of those fears are real, but that is how the ego has its hold on you. Let's talk about the ego a little bit. What we refer to as ego is what most people, most of the time, call me. They live their life through it. It is the inner voice that says, I am living my life, I am doing the dishes, I am going to work, I'm doing this or that. And the whole idea of that identity is what keeps the ego going. It is not needed, actually. Thoughts can come and they can have some practical application, but 90% of all thoughts are just about the idea of the person and situations that person's in. That's what occupies most people's minds. If you see people on the bus or waiting somewhere, they're usually in their mind struggling with some of these things. Most people are not just empty inside and can just watch the world completely and can be completely attentive with you when you come and ask something. They're usually completely drawn out of their inner world. And maybe you also recognize this with your own behavior. That is most people's mind. And what a meditation does is that it creates space. It makes you present. It makes you enjoy what is here. Even when the body is struggling, when there is pain, it can be all kinds of things, but you can stay as you are. And if you understand that there is no, because the mind says that there is options. We can prepare for the future, it says. It's going to be a difficult meeting tomorrow, but we can prepare for it by laying in bed worrying half the night. This is like the ego's idea of being prepared for a moment. And you can do planning and all those things, but when they're just propelled by identity and fear, as you know, it is worthless and it's just going in a loop. And this is the belief of the ego. And since we don't see what it does, and we're so used to the mechanics of it and the automatics of it, it just keeps on going. It does not need to do that. And you have to give it energy all the time. Your belief in every thought gives it, propels it, gives it energy. And we mainly give things energy through two ways: believing that something is important or resisting it. Those two are the same. Usually the mind also says, but if you resist the thought, you get rid of it. If you avoid a thought, you get rid of it. But this just suppresses the thought, and it actually makes the relationship to it on an egoic level stronger, and the feeling of identity stronger, because then you feel that you have to protect yourself from this feeling or thought. And that is usually the most difficult one initially to see, because you just have a tendency to avoid certain things, to suppress them, which becomes anxiety. Many people just do this automatically with certain emotions. They get suppressed and they become anxiety. And you're so used to it. So most people who are anxious a lot, they would say, I have no idea where where the anxious feeling comes from. I cannot see the source of it, because it is just so ingrained in the behavior. But as the mind becomes more spacious and less identified, all the things will start to come up. And usually it happens like this. You start your practice and you have if you really start to get into it, you have like a honeymoon phase. Meditation starts to feel really nice. The mind starts to be quiet. You notice some moments of, oh, it's very, very spacious and very silent. And if this goes on for a while, then the mind can really heal. But the expression of that is that old tendencies start to surface. And most people would say, my meditation is going terrible now. Now there's so much anxiousness and all these old fears coming up. And that is just the old crap coming up to the surface. It just wants to be aired out. So it's very important in that to just keep staying with it. Just allow that to happen. And it never happens when you imagine it, you always meet it sitting perfectly in your silent mind in your meditation. But usually those things crop up as people coming into your life. So you feel like situations change. But it is all these old tendencies coming back. And you have to be humble with the things that you don't see your own tendencies and your own fears. So they are all the time also projected into your world. And that's why certain things come to you. And I know that many of you have experienced in your life that a certain type of situation happens again and again. Kind of a relationship or a kind of situation that you always get yourself in that feels repetitive. That is a very good sign that it is something, a tendency coming from you. The world itself is very diverse and it can happen in many ways. But if there are strong fears or strong tendencies, you will pull certain events again and again until you see those fears. And this quality that life itself has is very beautiful, actually. In the beginning, it can feel almost like the universe is, it's so harsh. It's so brutal in its way. And the more you practice, you will feel like it's really on your side. It just wants to show you how you're stuck, how you're fearful, what you're caught in. All the time it wants to show you. So it's actually a beautiful thing. And things like, in the beginning you might be overwhelmed by certain feelings of fear or these negative emotions. But after a while, you will also start to notice when there is space, oh, a fear. Oh, I have a fear of this. And you will not at all be frightened by it. You will just see it much more plainly as a phenomena. It will not overtake you. You will not make a big situation of it. It is just another thing. And that changes when you start to look at the world as an observer instead of as a doer of your life. Life becomes so much smoother. What many people call to have flow with things will be much more natural. And those harsh ideas of the mind that a day is a good day or a bad day, and then it's set, those things will not be so locked in. And you will start to say things like, when people say, then this and this will happen, and you will say, let's see what happens. Because you know how flexible life can be and how changeful it can be. And if you're no longer with everything as an expectation, it can open. Yes, can you talk in the mic so that people on stream can also hear you?
Sorry. Now I forgot.
Take your time.
Let's see. I was just sitting. So, as the more you practice of being in this spaciousness,
Yes.
like in meditation. So I mean that, like, because I try to like rewire things, my thoughts, and I work a lot with myself.
Yeah.
So you mean like the more I just sit there and like touch this spaciousness, it will just like eventually vanish.
Yes.
Yes.
Because the therapy part of it has its value, because if life weighs too heavy on you, or you feel really small in every situation, it's good to do things that show you that you're all right. That can be helpful. And if you're very anxious or something, those things can be helpful for a while. But in the end, there are so many people who are just in like idea of that they're always in a process. They're always on to the next thing. What are you working with now? And they have friends that are in the same circle, and all you talk about is like your traumas or what you're working with and what is coming up and challenging. And it becomes a social event. It becomes something that you relate through. And then the ego starts to be addicted to that. And you want a next thing to have, because otherwise, what would the context be? And many people have that under like the idea that is gonna eventually put them in a place that is very, very free. But it's actually just a loop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you touch on this silence, then usually you start to see things like that. Oh, what I do is I just go in a loop. It's just a confirmation for the ego.
I can see and believe everything you say.
Yeah.
It seems like very much like freedom, and I'm touching it. But it's like, yeah, it would be amazing if that shift will come when it comes.
Yes,
Yeah.
but and I know that as soon as people hear about Vedanta or non-dual meditation, if they've been in other tradition, it's so common that they say, "Oh, yes, that is the advanced stuff." But it is very, very simple. This is not what I'm explaining to you. Doesn't take long explaining. I could write it on this paper. It's one page, and you can read it again and again. It's not complicated in that sense, but it just requires something different than just a method or a simple strategy or any of that. It just takes another sincerity, and you really have to look, and you have to be okay with not being comfortable. And this is where many people just bail on it, because they say, I just want to try to make my life as comfortable as possible. I don't want to be challenged like this. But in some, the longing for this truth seems to be very much on the surface. And I assume that if you come to me, that you have some of that longing. You want to know what life is in depth. What is my nature? What is this moment? Yes.
So I'm not sure how to pose this as a question, but I'd just like to ask you to talk a little bit about feelings of like negative feelings associated with meditation. For instance, like frustration about not being able to do certain things that you maybe have an idea that you're supposed to be able to do. Maybe perhaps jealousy over people who seem more proficient or seem to have adapted things more into their life, or like feelings of regret, like having some sort of insight about something or realizing something and feeling like a pain or a sadness of not having realized that sooner and like wasting like your entire life previous to this.
Yes, but
could I ask you to say some things about that?
Which one would you like to start with?
Oh, shit, I don't know. I think the jealousy one is quite interesting because I haven't thought about that one before, but I can feel that sometimes.
Yes. And when the ego gets hold of it, this is what it does. It compares things. It compares yourself with the teacher. It compares yourself with other people going here. If they say, "Oh, he's always seems so peaceful and calm. I'm not at all like that," or whatever the idea can be. But and the ego thrives on this measuring things. And also, if you come here for a while and you become one of the, start to notice that, oh, I'm very peaceful. They're a little bit more beginners, the other ones. And the ego gets hold of this, I'm a little bit more holy than the others. It just plays with all these parts of it. And it's just for the ego to stay relevant. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have any core, actually. It doesn't have any value. It's just to propel the ego to continue with its things. And the more you see what it is, and the more you can observe that jealousy, the more you come back to recognizing that it comes, stay for a while, and goes. And also, if you resist it, if you have shame when it comes to this jealousy, perhaps, you resist it, and then you have to invite it. You have to allow the jealousy completely. Okay, I can feel jealous. Let the feeling of jealousy come. And that the ego cannot really handle. It cannot stay with that, because it thrives in your resistance to it, in your relationship to it, that you're ashamed of your jealousy, or that you have some kind of relationship to it. That is how the ego continues. This wholeheartedness, this embrace of it. And when you have emotions that you have this ambivalent relationship to, just invite them completely. You sit in meditation there and jealousy is there. Just, okay, let me feel jealousy completely. Let it be here. And then it is felt. And as all emotions, it just want to be expressed, and then it's done. When we resist, we keep. And most of us are so tight and so used to resisting emotions that we're like all the time doing that. And in this, that's why I say, also when I guided meditation, you remember when you start to observe, I say, it's very easy that it comes a feeling of relaxation, because that sense, the ego's identity of a doer, is very, very tight. It try all the time to be in control, try all the time to do the right thing, try to be in the right way, to be liked, all these things that the ego wants. And it's very tight in that. So in the beingness, it relaxes. So for many people, it just feels like, oh, how far can this go? And when you feel like, oh, I'm so much more relaxed than 6 months ago, and you're just like, oh, it continues. And it just continues and continues, because we're usually so tight with our experience. Okay, what was the next one?
What was the next one? Well, perhaps the feelings of regret and sadness is another interesting one.
Yes, I can tell a personal story about that, because when I started to really understand what meditation was and really felt like this is what I'm gonna practice now, I had a couple of months where it came to me many times that I was so angry with my parents. I felt like they had failed me because they had not taught me this. And then I felt like at some point that I wanted to confront them somehow. And when I started to talk with them a little bit, I understood that they knew nothing of it. And it just humbled me completely in that. I just realized, okay, they couldn't see this at all. So then I could be with it completely. But I think it's normal, or that you have the feeling that you said, have I just wasted my life up until now? What am I doing? What is quality of life? Am I just trying to distract myself in as many ways as possible? Has that been my life? And you can feel sadness of all these things, but you can also feel the gratitude if you have found something that is other than that. Because most people's lives is just of convenience and distraction, if we're going to be very honest. They don't want the truth of things. They want what is convenient and what they like in the moment, and what is easy and what appeals to their worldview. They don't want it to be shattered. And luckily, I didn't know any of that when I started. I didn't know that it would completely redefine the idea I had of what life is. But it's also very, very beautiful in that. And it is a strange thing in a way, because it's so easy to talk about, and many people feel also, oh, this is really true to me. It resonates really nicely. But what it is in practice, and what that journey is, people they have their ideas, but they don't really know almost anything about it. And in our culture, we come very much from the individual achievements. We hold that very high in our culture. Most people are not have not grown up with parents that talk about know yourself. They just achieve things in the world. The school system is like that, and everything is propelling that, not knowing yourself deeply. So that's why it's also at first feels strange. It feels odd to take that on. But if the sincerity is there, the change is quick. And many things will fall into place. And those things that many people struggle with, the feeling of purpose, the feeling of context, all this will be much more natural and have a natural openness with it. Because if you're present with people, if you really listen to them, if you don't have your agenda and your ideas and everything, and you can really be with them, they can also be allowed to express. And suddenly they also realize that they are present. And at first they might just say, I really like talking to you. Because they think that it has to do with that. But it just means with you, I can be in acceptance of me because you are in acceptance of you. That is what happens.
That's nice. I like that. I don't have to. You don't have to say anything about frustration. I feel like that's you
Yes,
responded to that one, and that's feels a bit typical, you know. Yeah, you see what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you. Did you have a question, Rebecca?
I did, but then I got quite touched by what you were saying about jealousy, and I felt like a shift of my attention. But the question I wanted to ask has been for a little while, like since last week. So I do want to ask. I guess my question, in a way, it feels like a very personal thing, and partly I don't know if it's something that I would say in like a satsang, but more like but I'm curious about the place of the devotional path in the non-dualism, because since last week, when you're talking about these goddesses, I went on a little rabbit hole and been having like a dream and like a little bit kind of vision type, not like actually seeing, but like sensing. And then I'm thinking like I can so easily feel pulled, or like wherever I look there can be, you know, I can find like a interest or a thing. And
I can.
yeah.
But the ones who are naturally devotional, they have a very challenging life usually, because if the devotion is not directed to life itself, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, if it's not directed to something bigger, it usually becomes misdirected as the personal.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they get in a lot of trouble, those that people who have that, because they get so devoted to certain aspects of the transient reality of of consciousness. So, but to them, it's also very good to find this, because then they can put their devotion in a place where they can really rest. And I know that it can seem, when we talk about symbols like goddesses, that it seems like it's external in some way, but it's not. You are bowing down to you in that. I think the most a beautiful expression of it was when I was with my teacher and we had a retreat. I've told this story a couple of times, maybe you heard it. And the whole village comes in and they love my guru. So they all bow and they want his blessing. And the sadhaks, the ones who were part of the retreat, we were just sitting on the floor for a very long time. 100 people are going to go and be blessed by my guru. And when he has done that for 3 hours, blessing all these people and talking to them, he looks at us, and then and everyone who comes, they touch his feet. That's how they do it in India. And the last thing he does is that he touches his own feet and bows and then gets up. And that is a very good expression of what you're bowing to. It can feel like you are bowing to something. It's nice to have like a Shiva or a teacher that you really like, or whatever it is. But what you're actually bowing to is an aspect of yourself. That is what you're bowing to. Because you're not a person lesser than that. You are the same. The divine is in you. So that is usually the confusion with the bhakti path or the devotional. I don't know if that was what you...
No, I feel like I am understanding that. I found like Chinnamasta, I don't know how you say, and had really like deep resonance with this. You know Chinnamasta?
No?
She's with the severed head.
Okay. Mm.
And then I was like getting really into this past week, and then I was reading about how there's actually really important like tantric empowerments or things, blessing from a guru to practice this sadhana with these things. And then that was what started me thinking of, I wonder what you would think about that. Because I used to be in a tradition that had these all tantra Buddha people, and you needed all the empowerments before you could pray to them, and I was like, oh, this is rubbish.
Yes.
But with this one, it's like I don't know, I felt like I could understand in some way the sincerity of it, that there needs to be a certain sincerity?
There is merit to some practices. Some things that are ceremonial, some things that are symbolic, can have great power to them, but they don't hold any power by themselves. If your intention is there, if your intention is sincere and you're with it, you can do a lot of things that can be great spiritual things. But you can do the exact same motions, the exact same things, and they can be empty, blind ceremonies. So it's much more a question of where do you come from? What do you think that you are? Because otherwise you would be like me in the beginning when I practiced, that I just had the idea, if I practice hard, things will happen. And that is making too much credit for the external world and taking no credit with what identity does. And identity is the biggest factor in this. Your intent is the biggest factor in it. And the ego has the idea of like that you have an internal world and that is in some way, and that you can get away with things. This is like the context of the ego. But in the deeper aspect of your being, you're not getting away with anything, because that just means that you believe in your ego and you believe in your identity, and you create more of that. So you're just creating difficulties for yourself. Where we come from in it. A great example is also the great teacher Nisargadatta. They asked him, but you are enlightened. Why do you still bow to all these images of gods? And why do you sing bhajan? Why do you do that? And he just says, the body seems to like it. So it doesn't have to mean anything, but it can be the perfect thing to do. And that is why the material world is strange in a way, because it just means things if we put something into it. Someone talked about Carl Gustav Jung and said they talked about that dreams were symbolic. You know, the psychologist Carl Gustav Jung. Yes, and he said, but what makes you think that the wakened state is not symbolic? It is all symbolic. And also when the mind becomes silent, the events that happens just show you things. Everything is symbolic. The world just wants to tell you about you. That's all the universe does. It tells you about you. If you're fearful, yes, that is being projected into your apparent reality, and you will achieve the fruits of those fears, so that you can see that you are fearful of this. How you identify, that will be shown, and it will be reflected back on you. It will be reflected in your relationships, in everything around you. And that you can either struggle with that and say that the world is unfair, or you can take it as a blessing. And you can see what it wants to tell you. But if you try to push away everything, it's up to you, but it's a lot of suffering. Life is not so complicated, but we're almost never truthful about the experience. We talk about the external world as it has such a big impact, that everything in it is life. What you do in the external world is the thing, but it is completely secondary to you. You are the world. There is one universe there, one universe there, one there, and so on. You all live in one. And all of it is you. But you say, I'm a person moving about in this universe. That is not true. And you can experience that it is not true. In the gap between thoughts, there is so much space. As soon as you go beyond the surface level of the mind, it's so spacious. And if you can allow yourself to be with whatever comes in that space, there's infinite space. All the things that you're looking for, the contentment, happiness, the sense of love, all these things, being enough, they are here. You are that. And the more you can be with your experience as it is, the more precious every moment becomes. The easier it will be to relate to the people around you. You will perhaps not understand at first why they're so much nicer. But everything changes when you change. Because we see the world always from this subjective view. So we don't know that people respond to us in a certain way even. You say, I don't like that person. It's always that person always does this and this to me. But you don't know what you put out in that makes that possible. And when you change, that person might change completely. And we're so surprised when that happens. We think that they completely changed when our point of view and that we're not triggered anymore has changed. And when we talk about all these things that you see around you in society and politics, and things are polarized and people are violent and all this, it all comes from the idea of being separate. That's where all those things becomes possible. And if you don't feel separate, you won't be triggered by those ideas. They will feel very surface level. You understand how people can be drawn by them, but you will not be interested. But in people's pain and in people's unawareness of it, they just get triggered and they just go with it. And people get so easily manipulated through these fears. So break the pattern. Be as you are. Don't touch any thought. Don't believe me, try it. Okay. Any more questions before we end today? Yeah. Yes.
So you talked about like when people treat you poorly, and when you change, that people also can change in their behavior.
Yeah.
So I want to hear your take on like relationships that are very bad, and when you're treated very badly in the relationship, and what that can like mirror in yourself.
Yes, it is not automatically like that. Some people are also jerks.
Amen.
So, but it also has more to do with that some things you attract them or you accept them, and it can sometimes it has to just to do with self-loathing, that you don't really like yourself, so you think also that this kind of behavior is acceptable. And this is not conscious usually. It's very unconscious that those things can be there. And as the self-love grows, those kind of relationships will not be interesting. There has to be something that is inherent destructive that draws those in. And our unawareness is not, we talk about this very plainly now, but when you don't see, you don't see. It just feels like it just happens in my life, and I'm just coming in this kind of situation. And as we talked about, when it feels like I'm coming in this situation again and again, this kind of behavior, or I accept it again and again, that means that there is some kind of fear or some kind of identity that feels like it has to be held on to that can propel that. Because if you feel freedom and love, you will have the integrity of that love, and you will say, you're not welcome here because you cannot behave in a way that is respectable and that works. But all the things, even these bad relationships that we draw in, they have something to teach us. But I don't want to simplify it too much, that it's just like, it's because of a very specific behavior, and that's why a certain type of people are in all different flavors, but what makes you accept that behavior? Why is there not stop or no or go away at a certain point? So the change, you can first look at it here. It is the most important. If you stay with it and you start to be in contact with this deep beingness in you, this silence, then it's automatically, you will start to understand that you are the source of love. Because for many people, it's also that you're looking so much for confirmation outside that you're willing to tolerate a lot of things, because you just want someone to show you that you're all right. But you are already all right. That is your innate nature. Love comes from you. That love that you're looking for outside is here. You are already that. And when you get in connection with that, it will be so much easier to tell someone who has nothing great to bring you to go away. Otherwise, all these fears and that feeling of being confirmed by others will be so strong that you take not clear decisions. Thank you.
I have one last question.
Yes.
Because right before I came here, I had a conversation with my sister and we talked about like the purpose of life, and I heard you brought that up a few times, so I want to hear from your perspective,
yes,
what you think is the purpose of life.
Yes. The idea that of the person's purpose of life, and to chase that as a dream. Many people feel, I have no purpose in life. I have to find my purpose in life. But beingness itself, if you are in connection with that, life is inherently purposeful. You can call it precious, you can call it the moment, whatever you like. But it will have the feeling that everything is as it should be. And that is the sense of purpose, right? And if you want to talk about if there is something that all people deeply have a strive for as purpose, then it is to understand themselves, to know themselves. The existential longing for truth, whatever you want to call it. That is the purpose of the experience. And many people put their purpose in external things, and it can feel very much like the right thing to do, to put your purpose in family or all these things. But also the children won't always need you. And when your purpose is so strong, you see this in parents sometimes. They don't want to let go. They don't want to let their children grow up because they lose their purpose. So they cannot accept it. They just keep on treating them like children when they're long past the child age. And that is because they have externally put that purpose on something. But that is in their own nature if they would look here instead.
Thank you.
Thank you. We usually end by singing something. Right? Just send it. Okay. But you can share. Yeah, very good. Let's sing to Radha. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, 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 Jai Shri Radhe, Jai 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 Jai Shri Radhe. May everyone find peace, find their inherent nature, find their way back home to that awareness that is you. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your questions. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, and one final thing. If you want the thing that I read, you're very welcome to take one. And just, if you need a reminder sometime, you can just read it. And also, I record all this and I put them on YouTube. So you can always look at them again if you're like, oh, I like that question, I wanted to hear it. Whatever.